I was convinced my husband's son hated my guts. He was always watching me from a distance, his gaze dark and unnerving, lingering from the shadows. Then I stumbled upon a trending post on a local forum. If my parents get divorced, how do I get my mom to take me? She's not my birth mom, but I like her. The kitten wasn't born from her either, but the kitten gets to stay with her. Why can't I? Can a person turn into a kitten? Sensing the poster was just a kid, some users decided to tease him. Why don't you try forging a paternity test? A few days later, 6-year-old Oliver Reed, holding a DNA test report, knocked on my bedroom door. Just before I saw that post, I had been instructing the staff on organizing the seasonal wardrobe change. Not far away, Oliver was hiding behind a wall, half of his little head peeking out, his dark eyes fixed on me. I sighed. I honestly had no idea how to connect with my stepson. His father, Daniel Reed, and I were in a marriage of convenience. He was consumed by his work and worried the staff might mistreat his son. My family's business was on the brink of collapse. Desperate for a lifeline, it was a perfect match. Before the wedding, Daniel warned me that his son was quiet and withdrawn. He asked me to be patient and to make sure the staff didn't bully him. So on my first day as lady of the house, I had security cameras installed in all the common areas. I tried to talk to Oliver to draw him out, but he remained cold and distant. That all changed the day I fired the nanny who had raised him since he was a baby. He cried his eyes out, and from that day on, he was always there in the distance, staring at me from the shadows. I was racking my brain for a way to bridge the gap between us when the algorithm blessed me with that post. At first, the title seemed like a call for help. Evil stepmom has moved in. How does a smart kid fight back and not get bullied? It was clearly written from a child's perspective. I clicked out of curiosity. The mix of childish innocence and oddly adult phrasing was strangely charming. The poster described his family as wealthy, a single dad with a young son who had just remarried. But the more I read, the more a strange feeling crept over me. The details were uncannily similar to my own situation with Oliver. The only difference was the poster's reaction. Take the nanny incident, for example. The poster wrote, "Battle report. That woman fired the nanny who took care of me my whole life." The comments exploded. WTF? I thought this was a joke post, but this is a real evil stepmom. It's only been a few days and she already got rid of his childhood nanny. Dude, slow down. But a lifelong nanny? This kid is definitely rich. The new wife is probably a gold digger. She'll have her own kid, push this one out, and turn him into a useless brat to secure the inheritance. Poster, you're in danger. I've got a whole library of novels about evil stepmom schemes. Want me to send you some for research? Poor baby. You must be so heartbroken right now. The poster replied, "I'm not heartbroken. I cried because I was so happy. That horrible nanny is finally gone. She never let me dress myself. She even insisted on spoon-feeding me, going on about how I was a precious little prince born to be pampered. Before that woman arrived, the nanny kept badmouthing her and telling me how much better her own niece was, how she'd be a much better fit to take care of me. It was so annoying. I told her to stop, but she never listened. So I gave up. I'm so glad that woman got rid of her." Someone asked why he didn't just tell his dad. The poster replied, "Dad is really busy. I don't want to be a burden. I have to be considerate." Reading that, my heart ached a little. The other users flooded the thread with sympathy. Then one user commented, "This sounds a bit off. Is it possible the stepmom saw what was happening and fired the nanny to help you? So the stepmom is actually a good person? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It could have been a villainous plot that backfired and accidentally did some good." The poster replied, "I don't know if she's a good person. She makes me dress and feed myself. Now she doesn't even care that I'm a picky eater. My old nanny would always force me to eat my celery. Today she just watched me pick it out and didn't say a word." A user replied, "You're too innocent, kid. This is probably a classic move to make you weak and dependent. I have an idea, a test to see if your stepmom is truly good. You seem smart and articulate for your age. So here's the thing. If she's really after the inheritance, she won't want you to be successful. So you need to show a deep, passionate love for learning. See if she tries to sabotage you." The thread was full of praise for this user's genius plan. The original poster didn't reply. At this point, I wasn't so sure anymore. Oliver hadn't exactly been acting like a budding scholar around me. Was it all just a coincidence? Just then my phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice was laced with exhaustion but still gentle. "How are you settling in? Is Oliver giving you any trouble? I glanced toward the corner. The little head had vanished. No, he's been an angel. That's good. Daniel paused. I saw you let Mrs. Carter go. Good call. I was surprised. Mrs. Carter was a fixture in the Reed household, having been with the family since Daniel was a boy. She's been getting more and more out of line over the years, he explained, using her seniority to meddle in family affairs. She was the one who kept trying to set you up with other people before we met, acting on her own. I've wanted to fire her for a while, but I was worried about how Oliver would take it. You solved a real problem for me. I said I thought Oliver was going to miss her terribly. A soft chuckle came from the other end of the line. Oh, he was crying with joy. Don't let him fool you. That kid keeps everything bottled up inside. After we hung up, I was almost certain the poster was Oliver. All this time, his dark, gloomy stares weren't because he hated me. He was observing me. I refreshed the page and saw a new update. Dad called me tonight. He praised that woman. I'm even happier now. Tomorrow I'm going to test her. I'll find out if she's really on my side, if she's a good person. Then it's time for the next phase of my plan. The comment section went wild again. What plan? Tell us more. I'm guessing it's a plan to secure the inheritance. Dude, he's 6. What does he know about inheritance? He probably just wants his stepmom to genuinely care about him. Yeah, totally. This is gonna be good. You got this, kid. We're all behind you. I couldn't help but smile at the screen. All right, Oliver Reed. Let's see what kind of test you have in store for me tomorrow. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Oliver sitting on the living room sofa, a complete departure from his usual lurking. He was dressed in a sharp little suit, his hair neatly combed. Cradled in his arms was a book bigger than his face. The title read, An Introduction to Quantum Physics. I bit back a laugh. A bit much, don't you think? The moment he saw me, he sat up ramrod straight, held the book up, and pretended to be deeply engrossed in reading. But his eyes kept darting in my direction. I suppressed my amusement and sat down beside him. Oliver. He flinched, then gave a tiny nod, his voice barely louder than a mosquito. Yeah. Do you understand it? His face turned bright red. He clutched the book tighter and said nothing. I leaned in for a closer look and nearly lost the battle against laughter. The book was upside down. So this was his master plan. To show a deep, passionate love for learning. It was ridiculously adorable. I cleared my throat, deciding to play along with his little act. Wow, I said solemnly, as if I were standing in a lecture hall instead of my living room. Quantum physics before breakfast? That's ambitious. Oliver's ears went crimson. He held the book higher, like it could hide his whole face. I reached over and gently rotated it right side up. He froze. Then very slowly he lowered the book and stared at me like I'd just disarmed a bomb with my bare hands. I pretended not to notice the panic in his eyes. So, I continued, keeping my voice light. What's your favorite part? Wave functions or black holes? His small mouth opened, closed, then opened again. No sound came out. I waited, patient. Like Daniel had asked me to be. Finally, Oliver's voice came out in a tiny squeak. Both. Both, I repeated with approval. Solid answer. His shoulders relaxed by 1 millimeter. I didn't push. I didn't laugh. I just sat with him, close enough to feel the tension in his little body, and picked up a magazine from the coffee table, like this was the most normal thing in the world. For a full minute, the only sound was the quiet hum of the house. Then Oliver, still gripping the oversized book like a shield, whispered, Do you like learning? It was so careful, so rehearsed, that I almost smiled. Almost. I set the magazine down. I like effort, I said. And I like curiosity. And I like kids who try, even when they're nervous. His eyes flicked to my face. Even if they don't understand it? Especially then. I tapped the cover. But you know, if you want to impress me, you don't need quantum physics. He looked betrayed. Like he'd studied for the wrong test. I leaned closer, lowering my voice as if I were letting him in on a secret. If you really want to impress me, you tell me what you actually care about. Oliver's throat bobbed. He stared at the carpet like it held the answer key. Before he could work up the courage to say anything, my phone rang. A call from his school. I stood and stepped aside, answering quietly. The homeroom teacher sounded polite but strained. Mrs. Reed, I'm calling about Oliver. He submitted a formal application to skip a grade. Based on his performance, the school approved him for placement testing next month. But because he's so young, a guardian needs to come in and sign the paperwork. I blinked. caught between surprise and a sudden, reluctant admiration. Oliver applied to skip a grade? I glanced back at the sofa. The moment Oliver saw my expression, he stiffened. His eyes widened, then narrowed, like he could tell I'd just been handed a piece of his secret plan. I thanked the teacher and hung up. Oliver's gaze followed me like a laser as I returned to the living room. He didn't ask what the call was about. He didn't move. But all the muscles in his body screamed, "Say it. Confront me. Prove you're the villain." I didn't. I sat back down and picked up the magazine again. Oliver's fingers tightened around the book until his knuckles went pale. That day, he circled me like a tiny, determined storm cloud. He passed the doorway to the kitchen twice, lingered near the staircase, appeared behind the indoor plants like a suspicious little spy. Every time I looked up, he was somewhere nearby, watching to see what I'd do with the information. I did nothing. By the end of the second day, he still hadn't said a word. On the third day, the school called again. This time, the teacher didn't bother hiding their alarm. "Mrs. Reed." Oliver brought an adult to campus claiming to be his guardian. "We stopped them at the front office, but we need you to come in." My stomach dropped. I ended the call, marched into the living room, and found Oliver standing there with his hands behind his back, head bowed, looking like a knight awaiting execution. I planted my hands on my hips. "Oliver Reed." He flinched. I waited until his eyes met mine. "Do you have any idea what could have happened?" I asked. His lips trembled. He shook his head, but his eyes were wet. I exhaled hard, forcing my tone to stay steady. "Come here." He shuffled forward like he expected me to snap. Instead, I crouched so we were eye level. "First," I said, "I'm going to praise you." He blinked, confused. "You have problem-solving skills," I continued. "When you thought one method wouldn't work, you tried another. That means you're resourceful." Oliver's face scrunched up like he couldn't compute the words. Then, I held up one finger. "But," I said, "now I'm going to criticize you." His shoulders tensed again. "You tried to solve it alone." I kept my voice calm, but there was steel under it now. "You found a stranger to pretend to be your family. What if they weren't just pretending? What if they decided to take you?" Oliver's eyes darted toward his little smartwatch, like it might defend him. Before he could say anything, I gently covered his mouth with my palm, more to stop the immediate protest than to frighten him, and pulled him into a quick, firm hug. He went stiff, then slowly, shakily, melted into it. When I let him go, his eyes were wide and glossy. "You're smart," I said softly. "But being smart doesn't make you invincible." He swallowed. "I thought. I know what you thought." I tapped his chest lightly. "You thought you had to be considerate. You thought your dad was busy. You thought if you made trouble, you'd be a burden." He lowered his gaze. "And you thought I wouldn't help," I added. Oliver didn't answer, but the silence said yes. I tilted my head. "Did you talk to me? Even once? Did you tell me you wanted to take the test?" His eyes flashed with sudden, wounded accusation. I didn't dodge it. "Yes," I admitted, "I got the call." His breath caught. "But I didn't know if you were ready," I continued. "And you didn't come to me. So I waited. I thought you'd talk when you felt safe enough." Oliver's voice came out broken. "I didn't think you wanted me to." My chest tightened. I took a slow breath, then said, "Okay, new rule." He looked up. "If you have a problem, you can come to me," I said. "If someone doesn't listen to you, you come to me. If you're scared, you come to me. If you want something, you come to me. Do you understand?" Oliver nodded so fast his hair bounced. "And," I added, "because lessons sometimes need consequences, we're also going to make sure you remember this." His face went pale again. I held out my hand. "How much allowance have you saved?" He hesitated, then slowly opened his little wallet with trembling fingers like it was a ritual sacrifice. 2,000. "Good," I said, taking it without flinching. "It's mine now." Oliver's mouth fell open. Then he burst into real tears. Silent at first, then shaky, then full body sobs. I handed him tissues and waited until he could breathe again. "Your family is rich," I said gently. "But that doesn't mean you can buy your way out of danger. Losing money hurts. Losing you would destroy your dad. Understand?" He sniffled, nodding. When he finally calmed down, I brushed his cheek with my thumb and said, "Now, about skipping a grade." His face lit up through the tears like sunrise. "You still want to do it?" I asked. He nodded. "You know your classmates will be older," I said. "The work will be harder. You'll be tired. People might not understand you." Oliver's small jaw tightened. "I know. Then I'll go to school, I said. I'll sign the paperwork. And I'll take you to the exam. His inhale was so sharp it turned into a hiccup. He tried to look cool about it and failed spectacularly. I laughed, my first real laugh in days, and Oliver's whole face turned pink with joy. That night, I checked the forum. Of course he'd updated. He didn't mention the impersonation disaster. He simply wrote that he'd applied to skip a grade, and that the stepmom had agreed to handle the paperwork. The comments exploded with admiration and paranoia. Some praised him as a genius. Some warned that sweet stepmoms were the most dangerous type. One person asked his age. Oliver replied, 6.5. I stared at the screen, then stared at the living room. The next morning, Oliver found his tablet locked down to a strict daily limit. He stood in front of me, affronted beyond words. Why? Because you need sleep, I said, sipping my coffee. And because you're about to take a placement test. And because you still have eyeballs you want to keep in the future. He looked like he wanted to argue, then remembered the $2,000 and decided against it. On test day, Oliver behaved like he was going to war. He checked his pencil case 6 times. He inspected his breakfast suspiciously, like I might slip something evil into his food. He even wore an outfit with no pockets, apparently to prove he wasn't cheating. I simply held his hand at the school gate and said, "Do your best. That's all." He walked into the room with the tiniest, bravest little back I'd ever seen. When he came out, he looked stunned. "Did you sabotage me?" he whispered, as if he couldn't believe the world was allowed to be fair. I stared at him. "Oliver, I literally drove you here." A crack appeared in his expression. Then he smiled. Small, quick, like he was afraid it would be taken away. A few days later, the results came back. He passed. Just like that, my quiet, shadowy stepson became the youngest kid in a 3rd grade classroom. That night, his forum update was simpler than I expected. "I'm in 3rd grade now. She's not evil. She's been nice lately. My classmates can understand me. Today she patted my head and said I did great." The comments went soft for the first time. People joked that he'd gone from that woman to she. They teased him for falling. Oliver replied with something that made my throat tighten. "Before, nobody listened when I talked. She does. In her eyes, I'm the same as her." I didn't sleep much that night. 2 weeks later, it rained hard. I was napping when I heard Oliver scream downstairs. Sharp, frantic, the sound of a child who'd just found something he couldn't fix alone. I ran into the foyer and found 2 staff members trying to steer him away from the front door, their faces panicked. "What is going on?" I snapped. One of them looked relieved to see me. "Ma'am." He came home and tried to run outside. "It's pouring." We couldn't stop him, so we tried to distract him with toys. Oliver's eyes were wild, cheeks flushed, fists clenched. Whatever it was, he wasn't going to explain with an audience. So I grabbed an umbrella, opened the front door, and extended my hand. "Oliver," I said quietly, "Come." He froze. Then, like the word had flipped a switch, he bolted straight into my arms. His small, cold fingers grabbed my sleeve like I was a lifeline. We walked into the rain together, leaving the stunned staff behind. We followed the road for a while until Oliver tugged me toward a muddy patch near the curb. There, shivering and stuck in the muck, was a tiny kitten. Soaked, trembling, fighting for breath. Oliver's hands shook as he lifted it carefully, cradling it like something sacred. "We have to help her," he whispered. "Then we will," I said. And for once, there was no strategy, no performance, only certainty. At the vet, Oliver hovered so close to the exam table the nurse had to gently guide him back. He didn't cry until the kitten was stable, until the doctor said she'd make it. Then his tears came hard, like he'd been holding them in for years. When the kitten recovered, she came home with us. Oliver named her Daisy. A few days later, I was on the sofa with Daisy curled in my lap when I saw Oliver standing in the hallway, watching. I smiled at him. "Want to pet her?" He didn't answer. He turned and walked away. That night, the forum updated again. "She keeps being close to the kitten." I cried. The comments immediately assumed happy tears. Oliver replied. This time I was sad. I stared at the screen for a long time, a cold realization settling in. He wasn't jealous of the kitten. He was jealous of the tenderness. The next day, I found him on the rug working on a puzzle alone. I sat down nearby. "Can I play with you?" He looked up, startled. Then, without a word, ran off. I sat there, stunned, wondering if I'd misread everything. Then my phone buzzed. A new update. He came to play with me. I got scared he'd be bored, so I went to get my best toys. But when I came back, he was gone. He doesn't like me. He likes the kitten. My heart lurched. I practically flew downstairs. Oliver was back on the rug, surrounded by toys like he'd dumped his whole treasure chest on the floor. His shoulders were hunched. His face was carefully blank in that old, familiar way. I pretended I didn't notice him trying to hide his tablet behind a cushion. I sat down and picked up a puzzle piece. "That's a lot of toys," I said. "Are you trying to bribe me into playing with you?" He blinked, then very cautiously nodded. "Good," I said, "because it worked." His breath hitched. "But," I added, holding up the puzzle piece, "you didn't tell me you were going to get toys. So I thought you ran away because you didn't want me." His eyes widened in panic. I didn't. I touched his hair lightly. "Now you know how I felt." He stared at me like I'd just handed him a key to a locked door. Then I said, "You like puzzles because they become complete, right?" He nodded. I held out my piece. "This is my piece." He looked at it. Then he held out the piece he'd been gripping like a worry stone. "This is mine." I set mine beside his. "And this," I said softly, "is us learning how to fit together." Oliver's eyes filled so fast it scared him. "You're smart," I told him. "You're kind. You respect life. In my eyes, you've always been a good kid." His lips trembled. "Really? Really?" He wiped his cheeks with the back of his hand like he was furious about the tears. "Then, can you sometimes pat my head too?" My chest ached. "Yes," I said. "And I can say good night." His voice cracked. "Every day." I smiled. "Every day." For the first time since I'd entered that house, Oliver leaned into me willingly. And just like that, the shadows around him started to thin. A week later, Daniel returned from a business trip. He walked in during dinner like he belonged there, because he did, and took the seat beside me with the ease of habit. Oliver sat across from us. Daisy curled in a cat bed near the heater. The chef had made celery. Daniel noticed Oliver carefully picking it out and frowned. "Oliver, no picky eating." Oliver's chopsticks froze midair, and his eyes flicked to me, a silent plea, old fear. I didn't hesitate. I lifted a piece of fish and placed it into Daniel's bowl. Daniel stared at it like it had personally offended him. Everyone in the household knew Daniel didn't eat sea fish. He looked up at me, ears slowly turning red, and misunderstanding completely, ate it. "I understand," he said earnestly. "I'll lead by example." I stared. Oliver stared. The chef stared. I sighed and put down my chopsticks. "That's not what I meant." Daniel froze. I spoke calmly. "I mean, no one should be forced to eat something they hate. You don't eat fish. So the chef never makes it when you're home. That's a choice we already respect." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. I continued. "Oliver doesn't like celery. So don't frame forcing him as love. Nutrition can come from other foods. Respect is also love." The table went quiet. Daniel's throat bobbed. I didn't mean." "I know," I said softer now. "But intention doesn't erase impact." Oliver's shoulders eased like someone had unknotted a rope inside his chest. Later that night, Daniel asked to speak in the study. He sat across from me, hands clasped tightly, guilt on his face like it was carved there. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've been absent. I thought providing was enough. I didn't realize." He trailed off. I saw it then. Not a cold tycoon, not a convenient husband, but a man who'd been carrying too much alone and never learned how to say the things that mattered. "You don't need to apologize to me," I said quietly. "You need to show up for him." Daniel nodded. "I want to. I just don't know how." "You learn," I said. "The same way Oliver learns. By trying." The next morning, Daniel woke Oliver himself. Oliver stumbled out, hair a mess, still half asleep. Daniel crouched in front of him, awkward as hell, and said, "Oliver, I heard lately your mom." Oliver lifted a hand, stopping him. "Not sister." Daniel blinked. Oliver's voice was small but firm. "Mom." Daniel's ears turned bright red. He swallowed hard. "Mom told me everything. I'm sorry. I haven't been a good dad." Oliver looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "I know you're busy," Oliver said. "I keep telling myself to be understanding. But every time, my chest feels heavy." Daniel's expression crumpled. "I'm not mad," Oliver continued. "But I don't want to forgive you right away." Daniel flinched like he'd been slapped. And then, instead of defending himself, he nodded. Oliver added, "Unless you spend more time with me. Can you?" Daniel's eyes went wet. "I can," he said immediately. "I can." And for several days he did. He worked from home, rearranged meetings, ate dinner with us, sat with Oliver while he did homework, even tolerated Daisy climbing onto his lap like she owned him. It should have felt like peace. It did. Almost. Then, on a morning when I was reading a project file on my laptop, a package arrived. No return address. Inside were printed photographs. Daniel in his bedroom. And a young woman too close, too intimate. My pulse went cold. I took pictures of the photos, sent them to Daniel and typed one sentence, explain. A minute later, my friend called me, already furious. Tell me he's not cheating, she said. I took a breath. I don't know yet. We ran the images through someone she trusted. They weren't edited. I sat there with Daisy rubbing against my ankle, trying to decide how I felt. The truth was ugly in its simplicity. My family's business was saved. Oliver was thriving. The arrangement had worked. If Daniel had crossed a line, I wouldn't hesitate to leave. But if it was a trap? I didn't notice the faint movement in the half-open doorway. That night, Oliver's long-dormant forum thread flared back to life. Urgent. If my parents get divorced, how do I get my mom to take me? The comments went instantly chaotic. Someone joked cruelly that a mom doesn't take the non-bio kid. Oliver replied, "How can I prove I'm her real kid?" A new commenter laughed and said, "Why don't you forge a maternity test?" I stared at the screen, dread blooming. The next morning, Oliver knocked on my bedroom door. In his hands was a DNA report. He held it up with trembling pride and fear. "I'm your real child," he said, refusing to meet my eyes. "Where you go, I go." My mouth opened. No sound came out. Oliver's lip quivered, and suddenly he was in my arms, shaking. "Sorry," he whispered into my shoulder. "Don't leave." I knelt, cupping his face. "Oliver, listen." The front door opened. Daniel walked in like he'd run through hell to get here. Hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, eyes red with exhaustion. "The photos," he said, voice urgent. "I don't know what they are. I swear to you. I already started an investigation. Please believe me." I held Oliver tighter and looked at Daniel for a long moment. Then I nodded once. "Study. Now." In the study, Daniel flipped through the photos with shaking hands. "It's my room," he said hoarsely. "That's me. But I don't remember any of it. I tried to take the pictures to inspect them myself." Daniel didn't let go. "Don't look," he said, voice strained. "It'll dirty your eyes." I almost laughed at the choice of words. "Daniel, it's not nudity. It's betrayal." His jaw clenched. I took a breath. "We call the police." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes." The investigation took time. There was no timestamp. Too many unknowns. Then 2 weeks later, the truth finally crawled into the light. Mrs. Carter, the former nanny, in the interrogation room, she cried like she was the victim. She admitted she'd been trying to help Daniel by forcing him back together with her niece, the girl in the photos. She'd snuck the niece into the house. She tried to engineer chance encounters. When Daniel didn't respond and even criticized the niece as clumsy, Mrs. Carter panicked. So she bought drugs online. But the seller scammed her. It wasn't what she thought it was. In her desperation, she staged the photographs anyway, putting her niece beside Daniel while he slept, taking suggestive angles in his bedroom, then mailing them to me to trigger a divorce. "Rich families do it all the time," she sobbed, as if that made it normal. "If she leaves, I can bring someone better." She glared at me through tears like I was the intruder. The police didn't look impressed. Trespassing. Conspiracy. Drugging. Harassment. Mrs. Carter's years of service didn't protect her from consequences. When we got home, Oliver met us at the door like he'd been holding his breath for days. He launched himself into me. "Is it solved? Are you still divorcing?" I blinked. "Divorcing?" Oliver nodded, frantic. "If you go, can you take me and Daisy? We'll be good. Dad. I can visit him sometimes." Behind him, Daniel went pale at the word divorce, like the idea had been a guillotine hanging over his neck the entire time. He looked at me, voice raw. "You were going to divorce me?" I exhaled slowly. I was preparing for the worst. If you had cheated, I would have left. Daniel flinched like he deserved it. "But you didn't," I continued. "And I'm not leaving over a misunderstanding." Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief, but his eyes stayed troubled, as if he'd realized how easily he could lose us. That night, Oliver updated the forum again. "How do I make my mom and dad love each other more? I'm scared they'll divorce. If they divorce, I won't have a mom." The comments told him to stop worrying, told him to make his dad do the work. Oliver didn't reply. Instead, he knocked on Daniel's door. And later that night, a new local thread began trending. My son is actually my brother. I've been in love with my wife for 10 years. I read the first paragraph and nearly choked. The anonymous husband described being registered as the baby's father due to family drama. He described a marriage of convenience. He described a wife who didn't want children. He described a brilliant woman who took care of the child, helped him skip a grade, rescued a kitten, and changed their lives. Then he wrote, "Something happened that made me realize she could divorce me. I don't want that. How do I keep her? How do I make her love me?" The comment section turned into chaos, ranging from have an honest talk to seduce her to show abs. One commenter asked his stats. The husband replied with infuriating sincerity, 188 centimeters. I have abs. Not very thick because I sit a lot. She seems to like my face. I stared at the screen, then stared at Daniel across the breakfast table the next morning. Daniel and Oliver were huddled together whispering like co-conspirators. When I walked in, they snapped upright. Oliver beamed. "Good morning, Mom." He elbowed Daniel. Daniel cleared his throat, face faintly pink. "Good morning, wife." I pretended not to notice. "Morning." For a split second, Daniel's expression fell. Then, when he saw the corner of my mouth lift, he looked like someone had handed him the sun. Oliver leaned over and whispered loudly, "Dad, you're smiling kind of stupid." A few days later, Oliver left for a winter camp. The house went quiet. I assumed Daniel would finally have the honest talk the commenters had been screaming about. Instead, I was carrying coffee into the living room when my phone lit up with a forum update. I clicked without thinking. I took one step. My foot slipped. A strong arm caught me instantly, steadying me before I could fall. Daniel bent down, picked up my phone for me, and froze, because the screen was still open. His post in full view. He stared at it, then at me. Then, in a voice so quiet it barely existed, he asked, "You knew?" I closed my eyes. Too many coincidences weren't coincidences. "Yes," I admitted. Daniel went completely still. That night, the thread vanished. Deleted. Wiped clean. After that, Daniel started avoiding me. Subtly, awkwardly, like a man who'd been caught writing love letters and didn't know whether to run or apologize. When Oliver came home, he asked, "Did you and Dad fight?" I shook my head. No. But the truth was, I didn't know what we were. I didn't know how to tell Daniel I hadn't meant to spy. I also didn't know how to admit I'd enjoyed reading his ridiculous, earnest posts far more than I should have. Then Daniel finally moved first. On our 1-year anniversary, he asked me to meet him on the rooftop terrace. The city lights were scattered like diamonds. Dinner was private. Quiet. Too perfect. Daniel didn't give a speech. He didn't kneel. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents. Assets transferred into my name. Clean and deliberate. Not a trap. Not a test. Just security. I stared at him. "This is your romantic strategy?" Daniel's ears went red. "I wanted you to feel safe." I couldn't help it. I laughed soft and real. "Warm words aren't as useful as a large transfer," I teased, tapping the folder. "Money is a very warm love language." Daniel stared at me like he wasn't sure if I was joking. I tilted my head. "So, you read all those comments and this is what you remembered?" He hesitated. "Not only that." Whom? I leaned closer, eyes bright with mischief. "What else did you remember?" Daniel swallowed hard. "They said, I should show you my abs." His face went so red it was almost impressive. Then, because Daniel Reed apparently committed fully once he committed, he actually reached for the buttons of his shirt. I grabbed his wrist, laughing. "Absolutely not. There are still staff here." He stopped instantly, mortified. I softened, still holding his hand. "I'm teasing." Daniel's eyes searched my face like he was afraid of what he'd find. I didn't give him an easy promise. I couldn't. So I gave him something honest. "I may not be able to return your feelings immediately," I said quietly. "But I'm willing to stay." Daniel's breath caught. "I have time," I continued. "Time to understand you. Time to see what this can become." The wind lifted my hair, cool and gentle. Daniel stared at me like he'd been holding his breath for 10 years, and had finally been allowed to breathe. When we got home, Oliver came sprinting out. He looked between us, eyes shining, like he was reading the ending before we could say it out loud. I reached down and patted his head. Once, twice, exactly the way he loved. Then I looked at Daniel and said softly, "From here on out, please take good care of us." Daniel's voice was rough when he answered. For the rest of my life. And for the first time, the house felt less like a contract and more like a home.